She was alone and sad at the event, until the billionaire whispered, "Pretend to be my wife." Her response left him speechless. Before the story begins, please give us a like if you enjoy light and fun stories, and don't forget to leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments at the end. Enjoy the story, everyone. Kayla Hart wasn't supposed to be there. She knew it the moment she walked through the doors of the Grand Hamilton Hall in Washington. She knew it when the security guard checked her name 3 times on the list. She knew it when a woman covered in diamonds looked her up and down and simply turned away as if Kayla were invisible. And maybe she was. The charity ball brought together the kind of people who appeared on the covers of business magazines. Politicians, smiling with teeth that were far too perfect. Businessmen gesturing with imported watches that sparkled under the chandeliers. Women whose dresses probably had their own names and birth certificates. And in the middle of it all was Kayla, wearing a dress borrowed from her cousin, shoes that were already starting to hurt, and a heart that still ached for reasons she preferred not to think about that night. The only reason she was there had a first and last name. Renata Mura, her best friend since college, who worked in event planning and practically dragged her out of the house. "You need to get out, Kayla," Renata had said over the phone 3 days earlier. "It's been 3 weeks and all you do is eat ice cream and watch old TV reruns." "That's self-care," Kayla replied. "That's depression with chocolate topping. I have an extra invitation. There will be important people there. Connections, opportunities. There will be rich people looking at me like I'm a typo on the guest list. There will be free appetizers." Kayla hesitated. What kind of appetizers? And that's how she ended up there. Because of appetizers and a persistent friend who believed that leaving the house solved every problem in the world. So far, Renata had disappeared backstage to handle some emergency with the catering, and Kayla was left to fend for herself. 3 weeks ago, her life made sense. She had a steady job as a communications consultant at a medium-sized company. She had a small apartment, but it was hers. She had a fiancé named Derek who promised a future together. She had. Because 3 weeks ago, Derek decided his future would look better alongside his yoga instructor. And that the apartment, which was technically in his name, needed to be vacated in 30 days. Kayla took a deep breath, pushing the thought away. You look about as excited as I feel," she whispered to herself, looking at a swan-shaped ice sculpture that was slowly melting in the center of a table. The swan didn't answer. At least it had an excuse. Kayla walked to a far corner, near one of the huge windows overlooking the lit gardens. From there, she could watch the entire ballroom without having to interact with anyone. It was the perfect plan. Stay for 2 hours, send a message to Renata saying it had been wonderful, and then go home to watch something comforting on TV while eating ice cream straight from the carton. A solid plan. Foolproof. Until the moment it wasn't. On the other side of the room, Wesley Grayson didn't want to be there either. The difference was that Wesley didn't have a choice. When you are the chairman of one of the largest investment groups on the East Coast, and your name is directly linked to a bill regarding tax incentives for clean energy, charity balls are no longer optional. At 34, Wesley had built a solid reputation. Smart, strategic, cold when necessary. The kind of man who walked into a room and immediately changed its temperature. Not because he was arrogant, but because he radiated something few people could fake. Absolute control. But tonight, that control was being tested. The test was 5'7", had perfectly styled blonde hair, and a smile that seemed permanently glued to her face. Mallory Vance, socialite, influencer for causes that made for good photos, daughter of a senator who turned political connections into an art form. And for the last 6 months, the woman most determined to be seen by Wesley's side at every possible event. The problem wasn't just Mallory's persistence. It was what she hinted at. To the press, to acquaintances, to anyone who asked. Small comments suggesting an intimacy that never existed. Calculated looks. Touches on the arm that lasted a second longer than appropriate. Wesley had already made it clear, politely, that there was no interest. Mallory interpreted his politeness as shyness, or strategy, or anything that allowed her to keep going. And tonight, she seemed especially determined. "Wesley," her voice came like silk over glass, "you're avoiding me." Mallory, he replied, keeping his tone neutral. I'm just circulating, like everyone else. Always circulating away from me? She smiled, stepping closer. People are going to start thinking you don't like me. People think many things. They certainly do. Mallory tilted her head, studying him. For example, they're thinking it would be wonderful if the two of us did an interview together for that business program. You know the one. My publicist said the host is very interested. Wesley felt his jaw tighten. I don't give interviews about my personal life. But your personal life is so interesting. She touched his arm, leaving her hand there long enough for two people nearby to notice, especially when it involves such pleasant company. He needed to get out of this conversation. Now. It was then that his eyes scanned the room looking for any plausible excuse and found something unexpected. A woman alone, standing by the window, watching the crowd with an expression that mixed discomfort and irony. She wasn't trying to be seen, she wasn't posing for anyone. She didn't seem to belong to that world, and for that exact reason, she was perfect. Wesley made a decision in 3 seconds. It wasn't like him to act on impulse, but desperate situations required proportional measures. If you'll excuse me, he said to Mallory, without waiting for an answer. And he walked straight toward the woman by the window. Kayla saw the man approaching, and her first instinct was to check if there was someone behind her. Perhaps a hidden celebrity. An emergency exit. Anything that would justify why someone of that caliber was coming her way. There was nothing. Just her and the melting ice swan in the distance. The man stopped beside her. Tall, broad shoulders under a suit that was clearly custom-made. A defined jawline. Dark blue eyes that seemed to calculate probabilities in real time. Kayla recognized him immediately. Wesley Grayson. The face that appeared in articles about billion-dollar mergers and sustainable energy initiatives. What she couldn't understand was why that face was now less than 3 feet away from her. Good evening, he said, his voice low and controlled. Good evening, Kayla replied, cautious. There was a pause. Wesley glanced back quickly, where Mallory was watching with hawk-like eyes. And then he leaned in, bringing his lips close to Kayla's ear, and whispered, Pretend to be my wife. Kayla stood still for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned her face to look at him, raising an eyebrow. I'm sorry, what? My wife, Wesley repeated, still in a low voice, maintaining a casual smile for anyone watching from afar. Just for tonight, there's a complicated situation I need to avoid. Kayla looked at him, then at the elegant blonde woman who continued to watch from across the room. Then back at him. You're asking me to pretend I'm married to you, she said slowly, as if she were translating from another language. Because you can't simply say no to a woman? Wesley blinked. It wasn't the reaction he expected. It's more complex than that. Seems pretty simple to me, Kayla crossed her arms. Let me see if I understand. You, a grown man, apparently successful, with access to lawyers, publicists, and probably a small army of assistants, need a complete stranger to pretend to be your wife because you can't handle an insistent socialite. When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous. That's because it is ridiculous. Wesley opened his mouth to respond, but stopped. There was something about her manner that disarmed him. The frankness, the lack of intimidation, the sharp irony that seemed as natural as breathing. He wasn't used to that. I can compensate you, he offered. Compensate me how? Kayla asked, genuinely curious. Are you going to give me a gift card, a fruit basket, a pony? Whatever you want. What I want is to understand why you are doing this. Wesley hesitated. He looked again at Mallory, who was now talking to another man while continuing to cast glances in his direction. That woman, he said quietly, has spent the last few months hinting to the press that we have a relationship. We never did. But she is the daughter of an influential senator, and every denial of mine is turned into a headline about secret lovers or dramatic breakups. My company is at a delicate moment. I need the narrative to change. Kayla studied him for a long moment. And your brilliant solution is to invent a wife. My brilliant solution is to introduce a wife, he corrected. Someone she doesn't know, someone who isn't part of this circle. Someone real enough to be convincing. Someone like me. Someone exactly like you. Kayla let out a short, humorless laugh. You don't know anything about me. I know you're alone at this event. I know you don't want to be here. And I know that, for some reason, you seem completely immune to all of this." He gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. "Which means you won't panic if you have to improvise. Or it means I'm a completely unstable person who might cause an international scandal." "You don't look unstable." "The unstable ones never do," Kayla replied. "It's part of the charm." Wesley almost smiled. Almost. "So," he said, "are you going to help me or not?" Kayla looked at him. She looked at the room. She thought about Derek, about the apartment she had to move out of, about the pile of bills stacking up, about the life that had fallen apart in 3 weeks. And she thought that, of all the absurd things that could happen that night, pretending to be a billionaire's wife to annoy a socialite wasn't even close to being the strangest. "All right," she said finally. Wesley looked surprised. "All right?" "All right," Kayla repeated. "But I have conditions." "Conditions. First, you don't treat me like an accessory. If we're going to pretend, we do it as partners. You don't decide everything on your own." Wesley nodded slowly. "Fair enough." "Second, if someone asks me something I don't know how to answer, you cover for me. I'm not going to be embarrassed because you didn't prepare me properly." "Deal." "Third," she took a step toward him, lifting her chin, "if at any point I decide this has gone too far, it's over. No discussion, no negotiation. It's over." Wesley stared at her. There was something in her eyes he couldn't quite figure out, a strength that didn't match the vulnerability he had noticed at first. "Deal," he repeated. "Great." Kayla held out her hand. "Then nice to meet you, husband. My name is Kayla, and you're going to owe me much more than a gift basket." Wesley shook her hand, feeling a slight smile escape. "Wesley, and I'm sure you'll remind me of that often." "You can bet on it." He offered his arm, and Kayla took it. Together they began walking back toward the center of the ballroom, where eyes were already starting to turn toward them. "One thing," Wesley whispered as they walked. "What's our story?" "Our story? How we met, how long we've been together, those kinds of details." Kayla thought for a second. "We met at a coffee shop. You spilled coffee on my blouse and spent 2 weeks sending apology flowers until I agreed to have dinner with you." Wesley looked at her sideways. "I spilled coffee on you? Would you rather have been hit by a hot dog cart? The coffee shop is fine." "I thought it would be." They reached the center of the room just as a group of businessmen approached to greet Wesley. One of them, a middle-aged man with an overly wide smile, reached out his hand. "Wesley, my friend, I didn't know you had company tonight." "This is Kayla," Wesley replied, placing his hand on her back with a naturalness that surprised them both. "My wife?" The man's eyes widened. "Wife? Since when?" Kayla smiled, tilting her head. "Since he spilled coffee on my favorite blouse and decided the only way to make up for it was to put up with me for the rest of his life." The group laughed. Wesley looked at her with something that seemed like genuine admiration. The act had begun. On the other side of the room, Mallory Vance watched the scene with narrowed eyes. The man next to her said something about the stock market, but she wasn't paying attention. Wesley was smiling. Wesley never smiled at events like this, and the woman next to him was no one Mallory knew, which, in that circle, was practically impossible. She took out her phone and typed a quick message to her assistant. "Find out everything about the woman in the blue dress next to Wesley Grayson. Everything." Something was wrong with that story, and Mallory Vance would not rest until she found out exactly what. The news that Wesley Grayson had a wife moved through the room faster than champagne on a waiter's tray. In less than 5 minutes, Kayla had already shaken 17 hands, received 4 compliments on her dress, and lied about her married life to at least 3 senators. The most impressive part? She was starting to enjoy herself. "So you met at a coffee shop?" asked a woman with gray hair and a pearl necklace, her eyes shining with curiosity. "What a charming story." "It was very romantic," Kayla replied, glancing at Wesley. "He was so distracted by his phone that he didn't see me. The coffee was hot, my blouse was white, it was a memorable disaster." Wesley cleared his throat. "I paid for the dry cleaning." "You paid for the dry cleaning, sent flowers, and showed up at my job 3 days in a row until I accepted a formal apology." 3 days? The woman smiled. "How persistent." "My wife calls it persistence," Wesley said with a small smile. "My lawyer called it borderline behavior." The group laughed. Kayla bit her lip to keep from laughing too. The truth was that improvising alongside Wesley was strangely easy. He followed her every lead as if they had rehearsed. When she made up an absurd detail, he confirmed it without hesitation. When she exaggerated, he balanced it out. It was like a dance neither of them had learned, yet it flowed naturally. And that scared her a little. "You aren't wearing wedding rings," observed a short man with round glasses and an analytical gaze. Kayla felt her stomach tighten. She hadn't thought of that. "They're being resized," Wesley replied immediately, without missing a beat. "Kayla lost weight recently." "Wedding stress," she added. "Planning an intimate ceremony with a mother-in-law weighing in on every detail takes anyone's appetite away." Wesley looked at her sideways. "My mother isn't that difficult." "Honey, your mother suggested the bouquet should match her dog's eye color." "It was a valid suggestion. The dog is blind." More laughter. Wesley lowered his head, hiding a genuine smile. "You're terrible," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "You hired me for this," she whispered back. "Technically, you didn't even hire me. You guilt-tripped me into it. You didn't resist. I resisted, for at least 4 seconds. 3, I counted." Kayla rolled her eyes but felt something strange in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like fun. The room kept spinning around them. More faces, more questions, more carefully constructed lies. Kayla discovered that Wesley had a natural talent for dodging uncomfortable topics. And Wesley discovered that Kayla had an impressive ability to turn any awkward situation into comedy. They worked, and people were noticing. "I've never seen Wesley so relaxed," commented a woman in a green dress, speaking to the friend beside her. "She must be special." Kayla pretended not to hear, but felt her cheeks warm up. That was when Colton Rains appeared. Tall, blonde, with the kind of smile that looked practiced in front of a mirror. Colton was an executive at a rival company and, from what Kayla could gather from the conversations around her, had an old rivalry with Wesley that went beyond business. "Wesley," he said, extending his hand with a friendliness that didn't reach his eyes. "And this must be the famous mystery wife." "Kayla," she replied, shaking his hand. "And you must be someone I should know, but clearly don't." Colton's smile flickered for half a second. "Colton Rains, Wesley and I have a long history together." "How nice. Long stories are great for boring dinners," Kayla smiled. "You can nap while the person talks." Wesley coughed, masking a laugh. Colton narrowed his eyes. "Funny, Wesley always had peculiar taste in company." "It's true," Kayla agreed. "He also collects old stamps and watches documentaries about fungi. I'm the most normal thing in his life." "Fungi are fascinating," Wesley intervened, joining the game. "Did you know there's a fungus that controls the behavior of ants?" "I didn't know that," Colton said, clearly not knowing how to react. "Well, it does. It invades the brain and makes the ant act against its own interests," Wesley smiled. "Reminds me of some people I know." Kayla bit her lip hard. Colton opened his mouth to respond but was interrupted by a woman's voice. What a lively conversation. Mallory Vance appeared as if she had been summoned by dark magic. Her gold dress shimmered under the chandeliers, and her smile was as sharp as a porcelain knife. "Mallory," Wesley said, his tone neutral. "Meet my wife, Kayla." "I haven't had the pleasure yet," Mallory said, her eyes sweeping Kayla from head to toe. "It's a lovely dress. Vintage?" "Borrowed," Kayla replied without hesitation. "From my cousin. She has great taste and a generous closet." Mallory blinked, clearly expecting a different answer. "How honest." "I try. Honesty is the foundation of any healthy marriage," Kayla smiled. "Are you married, Mallory?" Mallory's smile froze. "No, I haven't found the right person yet." "That's a shame. But don't worry, they say the market improves after 40. Wesley choked on his own saliva. Mallory gave a look that could freeze champagne. "Where did you two get married again?" she asked, changing the subject with the subtlety of a tractor. "I don't recall seeing an invitation." "It was intimate," Wesley replied. "Just close family." "Very intimate," Kayla confirmed. "So intimate that even we almost didn't go." Mallory narrowed her eyes. "And the honeymoon? Where did you go?" Kayla opened her mouth and realized she had no idea. She and Wesley hadn't discussed that detail. In fact, they hadn't discussed almost any details at all. The coffee shop story was all they had, and a honeymoon was definitely not in the plans. "Italy," Wesley said at the exact same moment Kayla said, "Japan." Silence. Mallory raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "Italy or Japan?" Kayla felt her heart race. Beside her, Wesley remained still, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. Both, Kayla said, forcing a smile. We went to both. To both, Mallory repeated, savoring every syllable. Yes, Wesley wanted Italy. I wanted Japan. So we did both. 2 weeks in Rome, 2 weeks in Tokyo. He ate so much pasta that he needed new pants, and I discovered I'm allergic to wasabi. Wesley looked at her with something between admiration and panic. It's true, he confirmed, his voice steady. I've never seen someone turn so red because of a condiment. It was traumatic, Kayla sighed. But Mount Fuji at sunrise made up for it, and the vineyards in Tuscany, and especially that little inn in Florence where Wesley finally admitted I was right about the itinerary from the start. I didn't admit that. Yes, you did. There was wine involved, but you admitted it. Mallory watched them like a cat watching two mice trying to escape a trap. What a charming story, she said finally. You two seem very coordinated. Years of practice, Kayla replied. Months. Wesley corrected. We've only been married for a few months. It feels longer, Kayla smiled at him. When you find the right person, time feels different. For a second, something changed in Wesley's gaze. Something Kayla couldn't quite identify. Mallory noticed it too. Well, she said, her tone icy. It was a pleasure meeting you, Kayla. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you around here. I can't wait, Kayla replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mallory walked away, her gold dress disappearing into the crowd. Kayla let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. Italy and Japan? Wesley whispered. You made up a month-long honeymoon in 3 seconds? You said Italy. I said Japan. What was I supposed to do? Admit we were lying? You could have agreed with me. You could have warned me beforehand. I didn't know she was going to ask about a honeymoon. She asked about the ring, the ceremony, where we met. A honeymoon was the logical progression. Haven't you ever watched a romantic comedy? Wesley stared at her. No. That explains a lot. They looked at each other for a moment. Then, inexplicably, they started to laugh. It was quiet and restrained, but genuine. You are completely crazy, Wesley said, and you are completely unprepared, Kayla replied. But somehow it worked. For now, she agreed. The ballroom continued around them, full of curious faces and calculated conversations. But at that moment, standing there in the middle of it all, Kayla realized something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't a game anymore. Mallory hadn't believed it. The look in her eyes at the end, the way she studied every detail, the message on the phone that Kayla caught a glimpse of. That woman was going to investigate. And when she discovered the truth, the consequences wouldn't just be social. They would be public. Kayla looked at Wesley, who was now talking to another businessman, his smile back in place. She had gone into this thinking about one night, but something told her she was about to get into something much bigger. And for the first time since she accepted the absurd proposal, Kayla's heart felt afraid. Wesley's car cost more than everything Kayla had in the bank, and in her closet, and probably in her entire life. She knew this because she was sitting on the leather seat, looking at a dashboard that looked like the controls of a spaceship, while processing the fact that the night wasn't over yet. Do you always take women in luxury cars after events? She asked, breaking the silence. Wesley, sitting next to her in the back seat while the chauffeur drove, looked at her sideways. Technically, you got in on your own. Technically, you said we needed to talk. You didn't say the conversation would be on the move. It's more private here. It feels like the beginning of a thriller movie here. All that's missing is the tense music. Wesley sighed. Do you always make jokes when you're nervous? Who said I'm nervous? You're gripping the handle of your purse so hard that your knuckles are white. Kayla looked down. He was right. She deliberately relaxed her hands. Observant. It's part of the job. The car glided through the streets of Washington, passing by illuminated monuments and historic buildings. In other circumstances, Kayla would have thought it was beautiful. At that moment, she could only think about how her life had gone off the rails in less than 3 hours. So, she said finally, what did you want to talk about that couldn't be said inside? Wesley stayed silent for a moment, looking like he was choosing his words carefully. I need the act to continue. Kayla blinked. Excuse me? Not just tonight? For longer. How much longer? A few weeks, maybe a month. Kayla let out a disbelief-filled laugh. You're joking? Do I look like I'm joking? She stared at him. No, he definitely didn't look like he was joking. Wesley Grayson had the expression of someone proposing a business merger, not an absurd favor. Let me see if I understand this, Kayla said slowly. You want me to keep pretending to be your wife, for weeks, in front of everyone, including the press, your business partners, and that woman who clearly wants to see me buried alive in some Washington garden. Mallory isn't quite that extreme. She looked at me like she was calculating how many people she'd have to bribe to make me disappear. That's just her way. Her way needs therapy. Wesley almost smiled. Almost. Look, he said, his tone more serious now. I know this is a lot to ask. I know you don't know me and that you have no obligation to help me, but the situation is more complicated than it looks. Then explain it to me. He hesitated. My company is in a delicate spot. We are in the middle of a major negotiation involving government contracts and international partnerships. My personal image directly affects investor confidence. And a mystery wife helps with that? A stable wife helps. Someone who shows that I am reliable, committed, and predictable. Mallory spending the last few months hinting at a non-existent relationship was creating a narrative of instability. So you want me as a walking public relations representative? I want you as a temporary partner in a complex situation. Kayla crossed her arms. And what's in it for me? Wesley looked at her. What do you want? The question caught her by surprise. She expected an offer, not an open negotiation. I don't know, she admitted. Think about it. Anything reasonable is on the table. Kayla thought about Derek, about the apartment she had to leave in less than 2 weeks, about the bills piling up, about the job she had lost 3 days before the breakup because the company decided to cut costs. And apparently, communication consultants were replaceable costs. She hadn't told anyone that. Not even Renata. I need a place to stay, she said finally, her voice lower. Temporarily, I'm between homes at the moment. Wesley didn't ask why, he didn't judge, he just nodded. That can be arranged. And I need time to look for a job, without the pressure of showing up at events every night. We can limit public appearances to 2 or 3 times a week. And I need you to understand one thing. Kayla leaned forward, her gaze firm. I am not an employee. I am not a subordinate. If we do this, we do it as equals. You don't decide anything about me without consulting me first. Fair enough. And if I want to leave, I leave. No drama, no retaliation, no professional consequences. Deal. And you're going to stop looking at me like I'm a problem to be solved. Wesley raised an eyebrow. Do I do that? You've been doing it since you saw me by the window. As if I were a chess piece you were calculating where to place. Maybe that's just my face. Your face needs an adjustment. Wesley finally smiled. A real smile that completely transformed his face and made something strange happen in Kayla's stomach. She ignored that feeling, completely. So, do we have a deal? He asked. We have a preliminary deal, she corrected. Subject to review as I discover more things you conveniently forgot to mention. That's fair. I know it is. The car stopped in front of an elegant building that Kayla recognized as one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. You can stay here tonight, Wesley said. Tomorrow we'll organize something more permanent. Do you always put up fake wives in luxury hotels? Only the ones who have a good sense of humor and know how to improvise under pressure. Then I'm the first. The first, and probably only. Kayla was about to reply when Wesley's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. What is it? She asked. Wesley didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned what looked like a long message, and with every second his jaw got tighter. Wesley? He turned the screen toward her. It was a preview of an article from a gossip site. The headline read, Wesley Grayson appears with mystery wife at charity ball. Who is the woman who captured Washington's most eligible billionaire? Below was a photo of the two of them. Wesley had his hand on Kayla's back, both smiling as if they were the happiest couple in the world. The news is already getting out, he said. My publicist is getting calls from reporters asking for confirmation. Kayla felt the air leave her lungs. So everyone is going to know? Everyone already knows. And what does that mean? Wesley put his phone away, his expression heavy. It means this is no longer just a one-night act. From now on to the entire world, you are my wife, and any mistake will be news. Kayla looked at the photo in her mind, then at Wesley, then at the Grand Hotel in front of her. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry was finding a cheap apartment and updating her resume. Now she was national news. This, she said slowly, definitely wasn't part of the plan. "Welcome to my world," Wesley replied. And for the first time, he also looked startled. The next morning, when Kayla turned on the TV in her hotel room, her own face was on every channel, and Renata's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The temporary closet Wesley provided for Kayla was the size of the apartment she had just lost. She stood in the middle of rows of dresses, shoes, and accessories, trying to process the fact that someone had organized all of this in less than 12 hours. There were discrete labels on every piece, indicating which type of event it was appropriate for. Formal, semi-formal, dressy casual, brunch with investors. "Is there a specific outfit for brunch with investors?" she asked out loud. "There is a specific outfit for everything in this world," a voice answered from behind her. Kayla turned around. A woman with short hair and red-rimmed glasses was at the door, holding a tablet as if it were an extension of her arm. "I'm Helena," she said, "Mr. Grayson's personal assistant, and temporarily yours as well. I have an assistant now?" "You have a schedule," Helena corrected, which is pretty much the same thing. Kayla looked at the tablet Helena held out. The screen showed a calendar full of appointments for the next 5 days. Lunches, dinners, a gallery opening, a cocktail party at an embassy. "This is a joke," Kayla said. "Mr. Grayson rarely jokes." "I noticed," Helena almost smiled. "The first appointment is in 2 hours. Lunch with the advisory board of the Clean Energy Foundation. I suggest the navy blue dress on the 3rd rack. And if I prefer the red one is for evening dinners. Navy blue conveys competence and reliability. And what if I want to convey that I was dragged into a life I didn't ask for?" Helena blinked. "We don't have an option in the closet for that, but I can arrange it." Kayla decided she liked Helena. 2 hours later, she was sitting at a round table with 8 people who likely made decisions that affected the economies of entire countries. Wesley was beside her, impeccable as always, navigating the conversation with the ease of someone born into it. Kayla, on the other hand, was trying not to drop her fork. "So, Mrs. Grayson," said a gray-haired man, smiling cordially, "Wesley told us you work in communications. Fascinating." "I used to," Kayla corrected. "Right now, I'm in a career transition." "Transitioning to what?" "I'm still deciding. Maybe an astronaut, maybe a baker. The market is tough for both." The man laughed, clearly thinking it was a joke. Wesley glanced at her, his jaw slightly tense. "Kayla has a unique sense of humor," he said. "It's what keeps me alive," she replied, picking up the wrong fork for the salad. Wesley discreetly pushed the correct fork toward her. "The smaller one," he whispered. "There are 6 forks. Who needs 6 forks? People who eat 6 courses. People who have problems." A woman on the other side of the table, with red hair and a serious expression, leaned forward. "I completely agree," she said. "I've always thought this excess of silverware was aristocratic nonsense." Kayla smiled. Finally, someone sensible. "Chloe Chen," the woman reached out her hand, "Director of Operations." "Kayla, impromptu wife." Wesley choked on his water. "She meant recent wife?" He corrected quickly. "We're still adjusting." "Clearly," Margaret smiled. "But I like her. It's refreshing to have someone who doesn't speak in corporate jargon." "I don't even know what corporate jargon is," Kayla admitted. "Better that way. Keep it that way." The lunch continued, with Kayla making at least 3 etiquette blunders, 2 inappropriate jokes, and inexplicably winning over almost everyone at the table. When they finally finished, Margaret pulled her aside. "Take care of him," she said softly. "Wesley works too much and doesn't live enough. You seem to be exactly the kind of chaos he needs." Kayla didn't know how to respond. In the car, on the way to the next appointment, Wesley was silent. "Did I mess everything up?" Kayla finally asked. "You said you were either an astronaut or a baker." "I said I was considering it." "You used the wrong fork 3 times. There were 6 forks. And you called yourself a makeshift wife in front of the chief operating officer." Kayla shrugged. She liked it. Wesley stared at her for a long moment, and then, to her surprise, he started to laugh. A real laugh, one that transformed his face and made his eyes shine in a way Kayla had never seen before. "What is it?" she asked, confused. You are impossible, he said, still laughing. Completely impossible. Is that a compliment? I genuinely don't know. Kayla smiled. I'm going to assume it is. The following days followed a similar pattern. Kayla accompanied Wesley to events, said things she shouldn't say, broke protocols she didn't even know existed, and somehow always ended up winning over at least one important person. At the gallery opening, she spent 20 minutes discussing contemporary art with a renowned curator, honestly admitting that she didn't understand anything about the subject, but found it interesting that people would pay so much for paintings that looked like they were done by 5-year-olds. The curator found her hilarious and invited her to a private exhibition. At the embassy cocktail party, she mistook the ambassador for a waiter and asked for more appetizers. The ambassador found it charming and spent the rest of the night talking to her about family recipes. Wesley watched it all with a mix of horror and admiration. How do you do that? He asked one night, while they were returning from another event. Do what? Turn disasters into victories. Kayla thought for a moment. I think people are tired of perfection, she said. Everyone in this world is so polished, so calculated. When someone shows up who is genuinely confused and admits it, it's almost a relief. Wesley fell silent. You can never be genuine, can you? She asked softly. Not in this world. That sounds lonely. He didn't answer, but something in his eyes told her she was right. That night, when Kayla was already in the room, Wesley had prepared for her in his penthouse. She heard a noise coming from the living room. It was almost 2 a.m. She went to check and found Wesley sitting on the sofa in the dark, looking out the window at the city lights. Don't you sleep? She asked. Sometimes I don't. Kayla hesitated. Then she sat down at the other end of the sofa. Do you want some quiet company? Wesley looked at her, surprised. You don't have to do that. I know, but insomnia is easier when it's not lonely. They stayed there in silence, looking at the city. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. For the first time, Kayla saw Wesley Grayson not as a billionaire, not as a strategist, not as the man who had dragged her into this madness, just as someone who was also tired. The next morning, Helena appeared with her tablet and a tense expression. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Wesley asked. The charity dinner on Friday. The sponsor list has been updated. She turned the screen, and there, in gold letters, was the name. Mallory Vance, lead sponsor. Kayla felt her stomach sink. Wesley looked at her, his jaw tight. It looks like she hasn't given up, Kayla said. She never gives up, Wesley replied. And by the tone of his voice, that was exactly what was worrying him. Mallory Vance knew how to make an entrance. The charity dinner had barely started when she walked across the room as if she owned the place, which, technically that night, she did. Her red dress looked like it had been sewn by vengeful angels, and every step was calculated to draw exactly the right amount of attention. Kayla watched her from across the room, holding a glass of sparkling water like a shield. She looks like a soap opera villain, she whispered to Wesley. She is a soap opera villain, he replied. Only with a real bank account. That's comforting. It shouldn't be. The ballroom was decorated with white flowers and gold candles, creating an atmosphere somewhere between classic elegance and a magazine wedding. Kayla had already learned to identify different types of events by the level of floral extravagance. This was clearly an event for imported orchids and crystal chandeliers. She's coming this way, Kayla said, noticing Mallory approaching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Stay calm. I am calm. You're crushing your glass. Kayla looked down. Indeed, her knuckles were white around the crystal. She deliberately relaxed her grip. Wesley, dear, Mallory said, air kissing his cheeks with the precision of a surgeon. How wonderful to see you supporting my cause. The cause is important, Wesley replied diplomatically. The Arts Foundation does admirable work. It truly does. Mallory turned to Kayla, her smile becoming sharp. Kayla, how good to see you again. I was curious to see if you would still be around. I'm still here, Kayla smiled back. Strong and steady, like a resilient plant you just can't get rid of. What a charming comparison. Mallory tilted her head. I was going to say you look more comfortable this time, almost as if you belong. Practice makes perfect, or at least it leads to not tripping over one's own dress. A woman nearby laughed, trying to hide it. Mallory did not find it funny. "It must be difficult," she said, her tone sweet, "to adapt so quickly to a world so different from your own. All this etiquette, these social codes, I grew up in this, so I don't even notice it anymore. But I imagine for someone who arrived so suddenly, it must be overwhelming." "Actually, it's quite educational," Kayla responded. "I'm learning that the more money people have, the more forks they use. It's a fascinating ratio. It should be an academic study." More laughter followed. A man in a tuxedo raised his glass in approval. Mallory pressed her lips together. "You're still very funny. I keep trying. But you know what they say about very funny people, don't you? Usually they're hiding something." The air between them grew heavy. "Everyone is hiding something," Kayla said, keeping her smile. "The difference is that some people are better at pretending they aren't." Wesley placed his hand on Kayla's back, a gesture that could have been affectionate, but she recognized it as a warning sign. "Mallory, if you'll excuse us," he said. "We promised to greet the ambassador before dinner." "Of course," Mallory smiled, "but before you go, Kayla, I love your dress. Blue looks so good on brunettes. It reminds me of one I saw in a department store last week. Identical." Kayla felt her face warm up. "Perhaps it's the same designer," she replied, her voice steady. "Good taste doesn't need to be exclusive." "What a democratic perspective," Mallory tilted her head. "Anyway, enjoy the evening. I'm going to circulate a bit. There are so many interesting people here, so many stories to discover." She walked away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and veiled threats. "What did she mean by that?" Kayla asked, as soon as Mallory was far enough away. "Nothing," Wesley said. "Mallory likes psychological games." "It didn't sound like nothing. She's trying to unsettle you. Don't let her." Kayla took a deep breath, trying to believe him. Dinner followed with polite conversations and forced smiles. Kayla did her best to look at ease, but she couldn't take her eyes off Mallory, who moved through the room like a queen bee, whispering into selected ears. At one point, Kayla went to the restroom and found two women talking in front of the mirror. "Did you see Grayson's wife?" one of them said. "She appeared out of nowhere a few weeks ago, and no one knows anything about her." "I heard Mallory is investigating," the other replied. "Apparently, there's no marriage record in any courthouse in the state." Kayla froze behind the stall door. "Could it be fake?" the first one asked. "I don't know, but if it is, Mallory will find out. She always finds out." The two women left, and Kayla stood there, her heart racing. When she returned to the ballroom, she found Wesley talking to Colton Rains, the same man who had tried to provoke them at the first event. "Ah, the mystery wife returns," Colton said when she approached. "We were just talking about you." "Good things, I hope," Kayla smiled, trying to look relaxed. "Always." Colton studied her in a way that made her feel as if she were being scanned. "You know, I tried to find information about you since that first gala. To send a proper wedding gift, of course, but it's impressive how discreet you are, almost invisible. No active social media, no easy-to-find professional history." "I value my privacy," Kayla replied, clearly. Wesley intervened. "Kayla works in communications. It's natural that she prefers to stay behind the scenes." "Communications," Colton repeated. "Interesting. At which company exactly?" "I'm in transition," Kayla said. "You know how it is, the market." "I do." Colton smiled, but the smile was not friendly. "The market can be cruel." He walked away shortly after, but Kayla felt that something had changed. When dinner finally ended and they were leaving, Mallory appeared one last time, intercepting them at the staircase. "It was a wonderful night," she said. "Kayla, we should grab coffee sometime. I'd love to catch up, to hear more about your story, all of it." "I'd love to," Kayla replied, her voice steady despite the chill running down her spine. Mallory leaned in as if she were going to kiss Kayla's cheek, but instead she whispered something only Kayla could hear. "I know you were unemployed before you met Wesley, and I know you lost your apartment. The question is, what else are you hiding?" She pulled away with a radiant smile, waving to other guests as if nothing had happened. Kayla stood there, frozen. "What did she say?" Wesley asked, noticing the change. "Nothing," Kayla answered automatically. "Kayla." "Later. Let's go." In the car, she stayed silent, looking out the window as the lights of Washington passed by. Mallory knew. Not everything, but enough. and she was making it clear that she would keep digging. The question was no longer if the truth would come out. It was when, and what would happen when it did. "Kayla," Wesley said softly, "whatever she said, we can handle it together." She looked at him. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But for the first time since she had started this madness, Kayla wasn't sure there was a solution. Because Mallory Vance wasn't just playing a game, she was hunting. Mallory's words were still echoing in Kayla's mind 3 days later. She tried to ignore them. She tried to pretend it didn't matter. But every time she closed her eyes, she heard that poisonous whisper. "What else are you hiding?" The problem was that Kayla wasn't hiding anything extraordinary. Just an ordinary life that had fallen apart in ordinary ways. Unemployment, a breakup, an eviction. The kind of failure that millions of people faced every day, but in that world of chandeliers and champagne, it felt like an unforgivable crime. "You're deep in thought," Wesley said, walking into the penthouse kitchen. Kayla almost dropped her coffee mug. "You need to stop appearing like that. I'm going to have a heart attack before I'm 35. Technically, this is my kitchen. Technically, you should wear bells around your neck, like a cat." Wesley almost smiled. Almost. It was Saturday morning, and for the first time since Kayla had moved into the penthouse, there were no events scheduled. No charity dinners, no lunches with investors, no cocktail parties where she had to pretend to be someone she wasn't. Just her, Wesley, and an incredible amount of silence. "What do you do on your days off?" she asked. Wesley looked genuinely confused by the question. "Days off? Yeah, that strange concept where you don't work. Some people even have fun. I read overdue reports. That's not a day off. That's just work in different clothes. I wear the same clothes." Kayla looked at him. In fact, he was wearing dress pants and a shirt, even though it was 7 in the morning on a Saturday. "Do you sleep in a suit?" "Of course not." "Then what do you wear to bed?" Wesley stared at her. "Is this an appropriate question between fake marriage partners?" "I'm your fake wife. I have the fake right to know." "Sweatpants," he admitted, "and a t-shirt." Wesley Grayson owns sweatpants. Kayla widened her eyes in mock shock. News alert. Billionaire is a normal human being. Nation in a panic. "You're annoying. You like it?" He didn't deny it. The day followed in a strangely domestic way. Kayla discovered that Wesley didn't know how to cook anything at all, and she spent an hour trying to teach him how to make scrambled eggs. The result was a disaster. "How did you burn scrambled eggs?" she asked, looking at the pan. "That defies the laws of physics." "I got distracted." "By what? They cook in 3 minutes." "You were talking about that comedy movie. I lost track of time." "Wesley, 3 minutes. It was interesting information about the lead actor." "I said he was handsome. That's not information. It's a basic observation." Wesley was silent for a moment. "He's not even that handsome." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "Jealous of a movie actor? Just an aesthetic disagreement." "Right, an aesthetic disagreement." She laughed, and Wesley watched her with an expression she couldn't quite figure out. In the afternoon, they ended up in the penthouse library, which was the size of a small apartment, and smelled of old books and possibilities. Kayla threw herself into an armchair, flipping through a book on art history, while Wesley pretended to read a report. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly. "You just asked if you could ask. Technically, that's already a question." "Kayla." "Okay. Go ahead." Wesley hesitated. "What happened? Before all of this, you mentioned you were in transition, but you never explained why." Kayla slowly closed her book. "Do you want the short version or the version with the dramatic details?" "The true version." She took a deep breath. "I had a fiancé, Derek. We were together for 4 years. We lived in his apartment because my salary wasn't enough to split a better place. A month ago, he decided he preferred his yoga instructor at 30 days to move out." Wesley remained silent. A week later, Kayla continued. "The company where I worked made cuts. Guess who was on the list? You. Me. So in less than 10 days, I lost my fiancé, my apartment, and my job. The disaster trifecta. I should win a prize." "Kayla, you don't need to feel sorry for me," she said quickly. "I don't want pity. Derek was mediocre, the apartment was small, and the job was boring. Losing it all felt horrible at the time, but maybe it was a favor from the universe. A cruel favor. The universe isn't exactly known for its kindness." Wesley watched her for a long moment. "You're stronger than you look." Do I look weak? You look light, as if nothing affects you. But underneath that, there's someone who has survived difficult things and still manages to make jokes about forks at formal dinners. Kayla felt a tightening in her chest. You do that too, she said softly. You hide things behind the perfect image. I'm not perfect. I know, you burned the scrambled eggs. Wesley laughed, a real laugh that lit up his entire face. You always do that, he said. Do what? You turn serious moments into something lighter, as if you're afraid of staying in the heavy stuff for too long. Kayla looked away. Maybe I am. They sat in silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people truly begin to understand each other. And that scared Kayla more than any threat from Mallory. Late in the afternoon, Wesley received a call and stepped away to his office. Kayla took the opportunity to stretch her legs, walking down the hallway. That's when she heard his voice through the door, which was slightly open. Yes, I understand the concern, Wesley was saying. But the strategy is working. The press bought the story, investors are more confident, and Mallory is losing ground. A pause. It's temporary, he continued. A few weeks, a month at most. Then we'll find an elegant way to end it. An amicable divorce, maybe. Or she simply disappears from the public eye. Kayla felt the air leave her lungs. No, there's no risk of emotional complications, Wesley said. It's a transaction. We both know exactly what this is. She backed away from the door, her heart pounding. Transaction, temporary strategy. She simply disappears. Kayla went back to the library and grabbed her coat. When Wesley appeared minutes later, she was standing ready to leave. I'm going for a walk, she said, her voice neutral. Is everything okay? Everything's great, I just need some air. Wesley frowned, clearly noticing that something had changed. Kayla, we'll talk later. She left before he could answer. Outside, the cold Washington air hit her face, but it couldn't put out the heat burning in her chest. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was the realization that, at some point over the last few days, she had started to forget that all of this was make-believe. And Wesley clearly hadn't forgotten. Kayla became a flawless actress. For the next 3 days, she smiled for the cameras, held Wesley's hand at events, and played the perfect wife with surgical precision. But the moment the doors closed, the smile vanished like smoke. Wesley noticed immediately. You're different, he said on the second night, as they were returning from a dinner with Asian investors. I'm tired, Kayla replied, looking out the car window. Pretending is exhausting. You never seemed tired before. Before, I didn't know I was pretending. Wesley frowned. What does that mean? Nothing. Forget it. She didn't explain, and he didn't push. At the penthouse, Kayla started avoiding the common areas. She had coffee before Wesley woke up. She ate dinner in her room, claiming she had a headache. When they did cross paths, she kept the conversations short and functional. Tomorrow's event starts at 7, she would say. Helena informed me, he would reply. Great. Good night. Good night. And that was it. Two people sharing an apartment like polite strangers in an elevator. Wesley tried to break the ice in several ways. He left a book about art history on her table, remembering their conversation in the library. Kayla thanked him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and never opened the book. He asked if she wanted to watch something together. She said she was busy looking for jobs online. He offered to help with the search. She replied that she preferred to do it alone. You're mad at me, Wesley finally said on the third day. I'm not mad. Then what is it? Kayla stared at him. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to throw it in his face that she had overheard the conversation. That she knew exactly what he thought of her. A transaction. A temporary strategy. She just disappears. But saying that would be admitting that she cared. And she wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Nothing, she said. I'm just being professional. Isn't that what you wanted? Wesley opened his mouth to respond, but he was interrupted by his phone. I have to take this, he said. Of course. You always do. She walked away before he could see the pain in her eyes. The next event was a cocktail party at a contemporary art gallery. The kind of place where people paid fortunes for paintings that looked like they had been painted by extremely agitated small dogs. Kayla was standing in front of a piece that consisted of a red square on a white background, trying to look interested. Fascinating, isn't it? A man's voice said beside her. She turned around. Colton Rains was there, smiling like a shark that had just found a wounded fish. "Very," Kayla replied dryly, "especially the bold use of red. You don't know anything about art, do you?" "I know that someone paid a fortune for a square. It's called minimalism. It's called successful laziness." Colton laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "You're funny, Kayla, always with a quick answer. But do you know what I've discovered about people like that? They're usually trying to distract from something." "And what would I be distracting from?" "I don't know," he tilted his head. "Maybe the fact that you worked at a company that went bankrupt 2 months ago? Or that your fiancé left you for his yoga instructor? Or that you were sleeping on your friend's couch when you miraculously appeared on Wesley's arm?" Kayla felt her stomach drop. "How do you know that?" "I have resources," Colton smiled, "and curiosity, a dangerous combination. None of that is illegal. No, but it is embarrassing, especially if the right people find out. Imagine the headlines: billionaire's wife was unemployed and nearly homeless before mysterious wedding. You wouldn't do that. Me? Never. But information has a life of its own. It leaks, it circulates, it shows up in inconvenient places." Kayla stared at him, her heart racing. "What do you want?" "For now? Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I know. Knowledge is power, as they say." He walked away, leaving Kayla standing before the red square, feeling as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Across the gallery, Wesley was talking to a group of investors when Mallory appeared at his side, as she always did. "Your wife looks tense," she remarked, looking toward Kayla. "She's fine." "Are you sure? Because she doesn't look it." "In fact, you two haven't looked well lately. Trouble in paradise." "Mallory, I'm just observing, as a friend. We aren't friends." "No? What a shame," she sighed dramatically. "I always thought we had a special connection, before this mysterious wife appeared out of nowhere." Wesley stared at her. "Kayla didn't appear out of nowhere." "Yes, she did. One day you were single, the next you were married to a woman nobody knows. I couldn't even find a marriage certificate, and believe me, I looked." "You shouldn't have been looking." "I care about you." Mallory touched his arm. "I always have. And it worries me to see you with someone who clearly doesn't belong in your world." "Kayla belongs wherever she chooses to belong." "How romantic," Mallory smiled. "But romance doesn't pay the bills, nor does it protect reputations. If this charade falls apart, Wesley, you won't be falling alone." She walked away before he could respond. Wesley searched for Kayla with his eyes and found her still standing before the painting, paler than he had ever seen her. He crossed the room quickly. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Kayla, you're shaking." "I'm cold. The gallery has too much air conditioning." "You were talking to Colton? He came to talk to me. There's a difference. What did he say?" Kayla looked at him. For a second, Wesley saw something in her eyes that looked like desperation, but it disappeared as quickly as it had surfaced. "Nothing important," she said. "Just comments about art. Apparently I don't understand minimalism." Wesley didn't believe her, but before he could insist, a gray-haired man approached with a wide smile. "Wesley, and this must be the famous Kayla. I heard you had a memorable honeymoon. Italy and Japan, wasn't it?" "It was," Kayla forced a smile. "Unforgettable. My niece is planning a similar trip. She would love some tips, then, especially about that inn in Florence you mentioned. What was the name again?" Silence. Kayla opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She didn't remember any name, because there was no name, because the honeymoon was a lie, just like everything else. On the other side of the room, Mallory watched with a satisfied smile, and Colton, standing beside her, discreetly raised his glass in a silent toast. "The inn," the man repeated, waiting. "What was the name again?" The silence stretched for another second, and Kayla realized the lie was about to fall apart. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. It felt like 3 hours. The gray-haired man was still waiting for an answer, his smile beginning to waver. Mallory watched from a distance with predatory satisfaction, and Kayla felt her brain freeze like an old computer trying to process too much information. Then Wesley spoke. "Villa Castellina," he said, with the naturalness of someone who had actually been there. "It's on the outskirts of Florence, a small, discreet place, perfect for couples who want privacy." The man smiled, satisfied. "Wonderful. I'll make a note of it for my niece." "Do that," Wesley continued. "Ask for the room with a view of the vineyards, Kayla didn't want to leave. It's true, Kayla found her voice, her heart still racing. The breakfast was so good that I seriously considered moving there permanently. She's exaggerating, Wesley smiled. The coffee was decent. What she loved was the fresh bread. He's being modest. The bread changed my life. I dream about that bread. You dream about bread? Don't you dream about bread? Wesley stared at her. I dream about financial reports. That explains a lot about you as a person. The man laughed, clearly charmed by the dynamic between the two. You two are adorable. My niece will love the tips. He walked away, and Kayla let out the breath she was holding. Villa Castellina? She whispered. Does that actually exist? It does. I've been there. And what if he checks? He won't check, and if he does, he'll find exactly what I described. Kayla looked at him with a mix of relief and irritation. You could have told me you had a repertoire of Italian inns. You could have told me you were going to invent an entire honeymoon without a backup plan. I was under pressure. Clearly. They looked at each other. For a second, they almost smiled. They almost went back to the way they were before. But then, Kayla remembered the conversation she had overheard. Transaction, temporary strategy, and the almost smile died. I need some air, she said. I'm going to the balcony. Kayla, later. She walked away before he could stop her. The gallery balcony overlooked an inner garden, lit by strategically placed lanterns. Kayla leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath, trying to organize the chaos in her head. Steps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Are you going to follow me all night? She asked. Yes, Wesley answered, stopping beside her. Until you tell me what's going on. Nothing is going on. You're lying. We're both lying. That is literally the foundation of our relationship. Wesley was silent for a moment. Something changed, he said finally. You changed. And I want to understand why. Why, to adjust the strategy. He frowned. What does that mean? Kayla turned to face him. It means I heard your phone conversation on Saturday. What conversation? The conversation where you explained that all of this is temporary, that I am a transaction, that in a few weeks you'll find a way to just make me disappear. Wesley's face changed. Kayla, you didn't understand the context. The context, she interrupted. What context did I miss? The part where you said there's no risk of emotional complications, or the part where you guaranteed this is just a strategy. It was a call with my lawyer, and what exactly does that change? It changes the fact that I was using the language he expected to hear. He needed assurances that this wasn't going to turn into a legal problem. Legal, Kayla repeated. You were worried about legal problems. Not about me. I was protecting both of us. You were protecting yourself. There's a difference. Wesley ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. What do you want me to say? The truth, for the first time since all of this started. The truth is complicated. Then uncomplicate it. I can handle it. They stared at each other. The air between them was heavy with something Kayla couldn't name. Anger, maybe, hurt, and something else she preferred not to identify. The truth, Wesley said slowly, is that I didn't expect you. What does that mean? It means that when I asked you to pretend to be my wife, I expected someone who would play the part and then leave. Someone who would be easy to forget. And I'm not easy to forget? You're impossible to forget, he said, and there was something in his voice that made Kayla's heart tighten. You came into my life like a whirlwind. You make jokes at inappropriate times. You question everything. You make me laugh when I'm not supposed to be laughing. Wesley? And yes, he continued, I said those things to my lawyer because I didn't know what was real and what was acting anymore, and that scared me. Kayla felt tears welling up. You scared me too, she admitted, because at some point I stopped pretending, and I realized you hadn't. I did stop, Wesley said. I just didn't know how to tell you. Silence. The garden below them was empty, the lanterns creating shadows that danced in the breeze. Inside the gallery, people continued talking, unaware of what was happening on the balcony. So where does that leave us? Kayla asked. I don't know, Wesley replied honestly, but I know I don't want you to disappear. Even if I'm an emotional complication, especially because of that. Kayla opened her mouth to respond when Wesley's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and his face hardened. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer. He just turned the phone toward her. It was a message from Helena, his assistant. Urgent problem. Gossip site will publish a story in 30 minutes. Title, The Truth About Wesley Grayson's Fake Wife. Source, Colton Rains. Kayla felt the floor disappear beneath her. 30 minutes, she said, her voice trembling. Wesley was already typing a reply. I'm calling legal. Maybe we can stop it. In 30 minutes? We have to try. Kayla looked at the garden below, then at Wesley, then at the gallery full of people who would soon know the truth. All the smiles, all the lies, all the acting. About to fall apart. Wesley, she said softly, what do we do now? He looked at her, and for the first time since they met, she saw genuine uncertainty in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted. But whatever it is, I'm not going to let you face it alone. The phone vibrated again. 29 minutes, 28 minutes until disaster, and Wesley was on the phone with 3 different lawyers at the same time. Kayla watched from the balcony, still processing how quickly everything had crumbled. 10 minutes ago, they were having a conversation about feelings. Now, they were in damage control mode. No, we can't sue before it's published, Wesley was saying, pacing back and forth. What? No, she didn't sign any confidentiality agreement. Because I didn't ask her to. Because I'm not a psychopath who makes people sign contracts before pretending to be married. Kayla raised an eyebrow. Technically, she murmured, a psychopath is exactly the kind of person who would do that. Wesley covered the phone with his hand. Are you making jokes? Now? I process trauma with humor. It's a defense mechanism recognized by psychology. Recognized by whom? By me. I just recognized it. Wesley stared at her for a second, then went back to the phone. No, I wasn't talking to you. Yes, I know the situation is serious. Yes, I know 30 minutes isn't enough time for an injunction. He hung up and immediately called someone else. Kayla went back inside the gallery, where the party continued as usual. People were drinking champagne, discussing art, and had no idea that in less than half an hour, their phones would explode with notifications about the scandal of the year. She found Mallory near the entrance, talking to Colton. The two of them looked extremely pleased with themselves. Kayla, Mallory smiled when she saw her. You look pale. Is something wrong? Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix. That's good. Sleep is so important for the skin, especially when one is under stress. Do you know much about stress, Mallory? I know a lot about many things, she tilted her head. For example, I know that sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones people try to hide. Colton smiled beside her. It's true. Hidden stories have a way of coming to light, usually at the worst possible moments. Kayla stared at them. The two of you really are made for each other. You should consider it. A relationship based on shared bitterness. Very romantic. Mallory laughed. How witty. I'm going to miss that when you disappear. Who said I'm going to disappear? No one said it, Mallory shrugged. Yet. She walked away with Colton, leaving Kayla standing there with her heart racing and 23 minutes left on the clock. Wesley appeared at her side seconds later. The lawyers can't stop the publication, he said, his voice tense. Freedom of the press. Without proof of prior defamation, there's no legal basis. So it's over? Not necessarily. Wesley, in 20 minutes everyone is going to know our marriage is fake. Your reputation will be ruined. Your investors will freak out. Your company. I know, he interrupted. I know all of that, but I'm trying to think of alternatives. What alternatives? Fleeing to a country with no extradition? Faking collective amnesia? Could you stop making jokes for 5 seconds? No, I really couldn't. Wesley looked at her, frustrated. Then, unexpectedly, he started to laugh. What? Kayla asked. Nothing. It's just that our lives are about to be destroyed, and you're still being you. Is that a compliment or a criticism? I genuinely don't know anymore. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the party around them. 19 minutes. What if we don't deny it? Kayla said suddenly. What? What if, instead of trying to stop the story, we retell it first? Wesley frowned. What do you mean? Colton is going to publish that our marriage is fake, that I was unemployed and almost homeless, that everything was a sham to protect your image. Correct. But what if we tell a different version? One that's true enough to be believable, but doesn't make us look like villains. What version would that be? Kayla thought for a moment. The version where we met under difficult circumstances, where you helped me when I needed it, where what started as something practical turned into something real. But we didn't actually get married. No, but we are actually together. Or at least we were, until I overheard that conversation and freaked out. Wesley stared at her. Are you suggesting we publicly admit we lied about the marriage, but that we are genuinely in a relationship? I'm suggesting we flip the narrative. Instead of being caught in a lie, we're a couple that exaggerated the story for reasons people can understand. That's very risky. Riskier than letting Colton control the story? Wesley stood in silence, processing. Even if it works, he said, someone would need to tell this version publicly, convincingly, before the article comes out. I know, and you're suggesting it should be you? I'm the only one who can. You're the powerful billionaire. If you speak, it looks like corporate damage control. But if I speak, it looks like honesty. Exactly. Wesley studied her for a long moment. You would do that? After everything? After what you heard and the way I treated you? You didn't treat me badly, Kayla said. You were just too careful. With your image, with your company, with everything that wasn't me. And that hurt. But it doesn't mean I want to see you destroyed. Why not? Because at some point, in the middle of all this madness, I started to actually like you. And people who like each other don't let people like Colton and Mallory win. Wesley took a step toward her. Kayla? Later, she said. We have 14 minutes. Help me find a journalist. A journalist? Someone who can publish fast. Someone who would prefer an exclusive straight from the source over secondhand gossip. Wesley thought for a second. Chloe Chen, the operations director who loved you at that first lunch. Her husband is an editor for a news portal. Perfect. Where is she? Near the bar. Then let's go. They crossed the ballroom together, passing Mallory and Colton, who watched them with confusion. Clearly, desperation wasn't the reaction they were expecting. Margaret greeted them with a warm smile. Kayla, Wesley, how good to see you. Margaret, Kayla said, I need a favor, a big favor, and I need it now. What happened? It's a long story, but the short version is, I need to speak with your husband in the next 10 minutes. It's urgent. Margaret looked from Kayla to Wesley, then back to Kayla. Does this have to do with that blonde woman who's staring daggers at you? Partly. And the arrogant man next to her? Totally. Margaret smiled. I'll call David right now. He loves a good story. She took out her phone and walked away. Wesley looked at Kayla. Are you sure about this? No, she admitted, but it's better than standing around waiting for disaster. And what exactly are you going to say? Kayla took a deep breath. The truth? Or at least the part of it that matters. Wesley's phone vibrated. 8 minutes. Across the room, Mallory checked her own phone and frowned. Something wasn't going as planned. And Kayla realized that, for the first time since this all started, she wasn't just reacting. She was attacking. 6 minutes. A video call. And Kayla Hart was about to tell her story to an editor she didn't know. David Chen's face appeared on the tablet screen Margaret was holding. He had curious eyes and the look of someone used to hearing unlikely stories. So you're the mystery wife, he said. Technically, I'm the not-so-mysterious girlfriend, Kayla answered, and that's exactly what I need to talk about. Margaret said it's urgent. In 5 minutes, a gossip site is going to publish a story saying my relationship with Wesley Grayson is fake, that our marriage never existed, that it was all a sham. David tilted his head. And is that true? Partially. Partially how? Kayla took a deep breath. We aren't married, we never were. The story about the honeymoon, the private ceremony, all of that was made up, but the relationship is real. At least it became real along the way. That's an interesting confession. It's the truth, and I'd rather the truth come from me than from someone with their own agenda. Who would that someone be? Colton Rains, an executive who has an old rivalry with Wesley, and Mallory Vance, who, well, let's just say she wasn't happy when Wesley showed up with a girlfriend. David smiled. This sounds like a soap opera. Believe me, I thought so too, until I was living it. Wesley appeared beside Kayla, stepping into the camera frame. David, he said, I know this is unusual, but Kayla is telling the truth. We exaggerated the initial story to avoid press speculation. It was my mistake, but what we feel for each other is no exaggeration. Wesley Grayson admitting a mistake, David raised his eyebrows. Now that is news. You have no idea, Kayla murmured. What was that? Wesley asked. Nothing. Keep being humble. It's working. David laughed. Are you two always like this? Like what? Kayla asked. Funny, you look like a couple from a comedy. We are a comedy couple, she said, just without a script and with real consequences. David looked at Margaret, who was watching everything with an amused smile. Do you trust them? I do, Margaret replied. Kayla is the most genuine person I've ever met in this business. And Wesley, well, Wesley has never smiled as much at events as he has since she showed up. I do smile, Wesley protested. You used to make a polite face, Margaret corrected. That doesn't count as a smile. I agree, Kayla said. You're teaming up against me. That's what couples do, dear, Kayla said, patting his arm. Get used to it. David watched the interaction for a moment. All right, he said finally. I'll publish your version, but I need something more, something different. What kind of something? Something that shows you're real. Any couple can say they love each other. Few can prove it. Kayla thought for a second. Kit, what if I tell him about the scrambled eggs? Wesley looked at her, alarmed. Kayla, no. He burned scrambled eggs, she told David, ignoring Wesley. I tried to teach him how to cook, and he burned eggs. In 3 minutes. That's almost physically impossible, but he managed it. That's private, Wesley said. It's hilarious, Kayla replied. And it shows you're human. Human billionaires are likable. Perfect billionaires are suspicious. David was laughing. Burned eggs, that's perfect. I have more, Kayla continued. He watches documentaries about fungi, he sleeps in a sweatshirt, and he once admitted my travel route was better than his, but only because there was wine involved. Kayla, Wesley said, but there was a smile in his voice. What, do you want to be likable or not? I want to have some dignity left. Dignity is overrated. Trust me. David checked something off screen. The story from the other site just went live, he said. I'm publishing yours now. Headline, The Real Story Behind Washington's Most Talked About Couple. Does that work? It works, Kayla said. Perfect. And Kayla? Yes? If this doesn't work out and you need a job, call me. You have a talent for storytelling. I'll remember that. The call ended. Kayla looked at Wesley. There, she said. Now we just wait. You told him about the eggs. I told him about the eggs. To a journalist. To a journalist who's going to publish it for thousands of people, yes. Wesley stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he started to laugh. A genuine laugh, the kind that completely transformed his face. You are unbelievable, he said. I know. It's part of my charm. Wesley's phone vibrated. A message from Helena. David Chen's article is going viral. Positive comments. Colton Rains has just been identified as the source for the other story. He's being criticized for trying to destroy a genuine relationship. It worked, Wesley said, showing her the screen. It worked, Kayla repeated, feeling relief wash over her. Across the room, Mallory was on her phone, her face tight. Colton was trying to talk to her, but she was ignoring him. Their plan had backfired. Margaret walked over. Did you see? People are loving the burned egg story. There's a hashtag Grayson Cook's disaster. A hashtag, Wesley said, expressionless. A cute hashtag, Margaret corrected. This is good. Trust me. Wesley looked at Kayla. You turned my cooking humiliation into a public relations strategy. I turned your cooking humiliation into proof that you're human. There's a difference. The difference is that now everyone knows I can't cook. Wesley, you're a billionaire. No one expected you to know how to cook. I did. Your expectations are unrealistic. Welcome to the real world. Mallory passed by them at that moment, her face red with anger. This isn't over, she hissed at Kayla. I know, Kayla replied calmly, but for now, it's over for you. Mallory opened her mouth, closed it, and walked away without saying another word. Colton tried to follow, but he was intercepted by a man Kayla recognized as one of Wesley's investors. The conversation did not look friendly. Is he going to be in trouble? Kayla asked. Colton? Wesley watched the scene. Probably. Investors don't like people who cause unnecessary scandals. Good. You're vengeful. I'm fair. There's a difference. Wesley smiled. They left the gallery together, the cold night air hitting their faces. The car was waiting, but Wesley didn't move toward it. Kayla? He said. Yes? Thank you for what you did back there. You didn't have to. I know. Why did you do it? Kayla looked at him. Because I wanted to. Because you're worth it. And because at some point in all this madness, I realized I don't want this to end. Wesley took a step toward her. I don't either. So what do we do now? He looked at her for a long moment, the city lights behind them, an uncertain future ahead. I don't want to pretend anymore, he said. Not about the marriage, not the smiles for the cameras, not the perfect story. I want something real, with you. Kayla felt her heart race. Wesley Grayson, are you asking me to be your girlfriend? For real? I am. No contracts, no lawyers, no strategy. Just the two of us? Just the two of us. She smiled. Then yes, Wesley smiled back. And for the first time since it all began, neither of them was pretending. Kayla's yes was still echoing in the air when Wesley took another step toward her. Washington, D.C. sparkled around them, indifferent to the fact that two people had just decided to stop pretending. The driver waited patiently by the car. A cold breeze blew down the street, and Kayla couldn't stop smiling. You're smiling, Wesley observed. You're smiling too. I don't smile. You are literally smiling right now. This is a facial spasm that looks suspiciously happy. Wesley laughed. That laugh that Kayla had learned to love over the past few weeks. The laugh he only showed when he let his guard down. So, she said, what happens now? Now? Yes, you asked me out. I said yes. What's the next step? Do we have to sign a contract? Make an official statement? Tell Helena to update the schedule? You're making fun of romantic moments again. It's my defense mechanism, remember? Wesley took another step. Now they were so close that Kayla could feel his warmth even through the cold night air. Maybe, he said softly, you don't need a defense right now. Kayla felt her heart race. Maybe not. Maybe you can just be here, with me. No jokes, no strategies, no pretending. That sounds scary. It really does. Are you scared? Completely. Good, she smiled. At least we're scared together. Wesley reached up and touched her face gently, as if he were touching something precious. Kayla closed her eyes for a second, taking in the feeling. Kayla, he said. Yes? I'm going to kiss you now. Was that a warning or a request for permission? It was a statement of intent. Very formal for a kiss. I'm a formal man. I noticed. Are you going to keep talking, or? Kayla pulled him by his tie and kissed him. It wasn't a movie kiss with dramatic music and slow motion. It was better. It was real. It was two people who had spent weeks pretending and could finally stop. It was clumsy at first, because Kayla pulled too hard and Wesley lost his balance for a second. It was perfect exactly because of that. When they pulled apart, both were out of breath. That was... Wesley began. If you say adequate, I'm leaving right now. I was going to say incredible. Oh, then you can continue. You're impossible. You've said that before, and I'll keep saying it for the rest of my life. Kayla felt something warm spread through her chest at those words. Rest of my life. It sounded like a promise. It sounded like a future. Shall we go home? Wesley asked. Our home or your home? Ours, he said, without hesitation. If you want. I do. They got into the car together, and this time Kayla didn't stay on the other side of the seat. She stayed close. Wesley's hand found hers in the dark and remained there for the entire ride. That night, they talked late into the night in the penthouse library. Not about strategies or events or public image. About childhood. About dreams. About fears. About all the things real people share when they are building something true. Wesley talked about the pressure of growing up as the heir to an empire. About the impossible expectations. About the loneliness of always being watched. Kayla talked about growing up without much money, but with a lot of love. About her mother who worked 2 jobs. About the dream of making a difference in the world, even without knowing exactly how. You've already made a difference, Wesley said, in my life. That's very cheesy. I know. I'm practicing being romantic. Keep practicing. You're getting better. The following weeks were a mix of adjustments and discoveries. David Chen's article had gone viral, and public opinion was firmly on their side. People loved the story of the unlikely couple. They loved the story about the burnt eggs even more. Wesley received at least 12 cookbooks from anonymous fans. This is humiliating, he said, looking at the pile of books. This is adorable, Kayla corrected. People care about your nutrition. People are making fun of me. With affection, there's a difference. Mallory Vance tried to regain ground in the first few weeks. She showed up at some events, made subtle comments to the press, and hinted that the couple's story was exaggerated. No one believed her. Public sympathy was with Kayla, and every attempt Mallory made to undermine that only made her look more desperate. Within a month, she had moved to California, claiming new professional projects. In reality, according to Helena, she was running away from her own irrelevance. "Do you feel sorry for her?" Kayla asked Wesley one day. "A little," he admitted. "Mallory isn't evil. She was just raised to believe that manipulation is the only way to get what she wants." "That's sad." "It is, but it doesn't mean we need to let her into our lives." "I agree." Colton Rains met a less dignified end. The attempt to leak information about Kayla backfired on him spectacularly. Investors didn't like finding out that he used dirty tactics to hurt competitors. An internal investigation revealed other questionable practices. Within 2 months, he was out of the company. "Is he suing someone?" Kayla asked when she heard the news. "He's suing everyone," Wesley said. "That's what people like him do when they lose." "Will it go anywhere?" "No, he doesn't have a case." "Good. You're vengeful. We've already discussed this." Kayla's life changed in ways she didn't expect. Not just because she was dating a billionaire, but because she finally had the time and space to figure out what she really wanted. With Chloe Chen's help, she got a job at a nonprofit focused on communication for social causes. It didn't pay as much as her previous job, but it was infinitely more satisfying. "You don't need to work," Wesley said when she accepted the offer. "I know, but I want to." "Why?" "Because working makes me feel useful. And because if I stay home all day, I'll reorganize your closet by color, size, and occasion, and you'll hate me." "I'll never hate you. You say that now. Just wait until I mess with your suits." Wesley learned to cook. Not well, not impressively, but enough to not burn eggs and to prepare a simple dinner when Kayla came home tired from work. "This is pasta," she said one night, looking at her plate. "It is. You made pasta." "I did." "By yourself." With minimal supervision from YouTube. Wesley Grayson watched cooking tutorials on YouTube. "That stays between us. I'll take it to my grave, right after I tell absolutely everyone." Their relationship wasn't perfect. They argued about small things, like Wesley working too much and Kayla leaving clothes scattered around the room. They argued about big things, like how much of their life should be public and how much should stay private. But they always worked it out. They always talked. They always chose each other. And that, Kayla discovered, was what mattered. 1 year later, the invitation was simple. Cream paper, gold letters, no exaggerations. "Wesley Grayson and Kayla Hart invite you to the celebration of their wedding." "Are you sure you want something small?" Helena asked for the 10th time. "We could do something grand, worthy of the occasion." "We're sure," Kayla answered. "We've had enough grandiosity. We want something real." The ceremony took place in the gardens of Wesley's estate in Virginia. 50 guests, simple flowers, a perfect sunset. Renata was the maid of honor, obviously. She cried throughout the entire ceremony and denied she was crying. "It's allergies," she said, blowing her nose. "Allergic to weddings?" Kayla asked. "Allergic to you being happy. My immune system wasn't prepared." Chloe Chen and her husband were there. Helena, who had become an unlikely friend. Some of Kayla's co-workers, a few of Wesley's business partners who were genuinely good people. No Colton, no Mallory, no drama. The vows were written by them. "Kayla," Wesley said, holding her hands before the officiant, "a year ago, I asked you to pretend to be my wife. It was the smartest and the most foolish decision I've ever made. Smart because it led me to you. Foolish because I thought I could keep it as a strategy." Laughter among the guests. "You taught me that control isn't everything," he continued. "That laughing is important. That burning eggs isn't the end of the world. That truly loving someone means accepting the chaos that comes with them." Kayla felt her eyes sting. "I promise to love you in the chaos and in the calm," Wesley said. "At boring events and on nights at home, in the moments when you make inappropriate jokes and in the moments when you pull me by my tie. All the moments. Always." Kayla took a deep breath. "Wesley," she said, "a year ago, you appeared out of nowhere and asked me to pretend to be your wife. My first reaction was to think you were completely crazy." More laughter. "My second reaction was to accept, because apparently I am also crazy," she continued. "But at some point between the first lie and the last truth, I fell in love. With you. With the man who burns eggs. with the man who watches documentaries about fungi, with the man who truly smiles when he thinks no one is looking. Wesley squeezed her hands. I promise to keep making jokes, Kayla said. I promise to pull you away from work when you need it. I promise never to let you forget that you are human. And I promise to choose you every day, not for strategy, not for convenience, for love. The kiss after the I do was better than the first. More secure, fuller of the future. The party was exactly what they wanted. Good food, soft music, people who really mattered. At one point during the evening, Kayla stepped away to watch everything from a distance. The lit-up garden, the guests laughing. Wesley talking to Renata, probably hearing embarrassing stories about Kayla in college. She thought about the charity gala a year ago. The woman alone by the window, in a borrowed dress and with a broken heart. The whispered phrase that changed everything. Pretend to be my wife. She laughed to herself. Wesley appeared by her side seconds later. What are you thinking about? About how strange life is. Strange how? Strange in the sense that a year ago I was almost living on Renata's couch, and now I'm married to a billionaire who can't cook. I know how to cook now. You know how to make pasta. Pasta is cooking. Pasta is basic survival. Wesley smiled. Do you regret it? Regret what? Accepting the pretense that night. Kayla looked at him. The man who had started as a desperate stranger and became the love of her life. Not for a second, she said. And you? Not for a second. He pulled her close and kissed her softly. You know what's funny? Kayla said when they stepped apart. What? You still owe me a fruit basket. Wesley laughed. I'll arrange that tomorrow. With a pony? Without a pony. Marriage annulled. You just married me 3 hours ago. Enough time to reconsider. Wesley hugged her, laughing against her hair. I love you, he said. I know, she replied. I love you too, even without the pony. And there, under the Virginia stars, surrounded by people they loved, Wesley and Kayla Grayson began the rest of their lives together. No pretending, no strategies, just love. And occasionally, burned eggs. What did you think of Kayla's courage in turning a desperate lie into true love?
Join the conversation. Your comments and engagement are part of the healing process. Let us know your thoughts below. If this journey of resilience and turning pain into power resonated with your heart, please support Healing Stories. Subscribe. Help us build a sanctuary of strength by subscribing to the channel. Share the hope. Give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message of recovery and justice. Your support allows us to continue sharing powerful narratives of overcoming trauma and finding peace. Subscribe to Healing Stories and be part of the change.